If you're someone who finds themselves eating in response to external or emotional cues, such as boredom, then you may benefit from a practice called mindful eating. From what I've gathered, it seems that mindfulness isn't well recognized as an evidence-based practice, and this could be because it has its roots in Buddhism, which in that context, it cultivates a subjective phenomenon, which is difficult to kind of study with empirical research. However, it has extended beyond that phenomenon into the sciences and Western contemporary culture. It has been extensively researched, and although the definitions vary depending on what you're looking at, the evidence regarding those problematic eating behaviours that I mentioned earlier is fairly substantial and quite promising. Perhaps a more palatable way of framing it is considering mindfulness as focused attention, and this will help to address the semantic ambiguity. Mindfulness is a metacognitive skill. It's a way of bringing awareness to the present moment with an attitude of non judgmental curiosity, openness, and awareness. Practicing mindfulness will not necessarily lead to weight loss in and of itself, but this doesn't mean it's an unuseful tool. Weight loss isn't always the only thing that we're looking at. I mean, you could be a normal weight and still struggle with a loss of control over your food intake. So, using weight loss as the only measure of benefits of mindful eating is a little bit short-sighted. Also, mindful eating can be used in conjunction with other interventions, and many people would benefit from more intentional eating practices. It's better to think of it as a skill set that you can develop so that you're more equipped to engage in goal-directed behaviour, whatever that looks like for you. Through mindfulness, you're likely to be able to self-regulate your behaviors with more control. Mindful eating consists of making conscious food choices, developing an awareness of physical versus psychological hunger and satiety cues, which is something a lot of us have lost touch with, and it involves making beneficial food choices in response to those cues. And it's hypothesized that the benefits of mindful eating come from three main things. So the first one being an increased awareness of your physical cues to eat. So this just refers to hunger and satiety. Mindful eating has been shown to be effective for slowing down the rate of eating, and that increased orosensory exposure time leads to greater feelings of satiety, and we're less likely to overeat if we're not hungry. There is also increasing evidence to suggest that many of the benefits from mindfulness can be attributed to interoception and its neurological correlates. So fMRI studies have shown reduced activation of the insula, which is part of the cerebral cortex, and that is implicated in self-awareness and perception, and hence it is linked to interoception. Now, interoception just refers to our ability to perceive our bodily signals, and high interoceptive awareness is associated with high interoceptive sensitivity, and this facilitates emotional regulation strategies. So we have a class of afferent fibers which monitor the physiological states of all internal organs, and this feeds back to the interoceptive centers in the insular cortex. So this is just a complicated way of illustrating one of the ways that our body and our brains are connected. The second way in which mindfulness seems to be beneficial is through an increased awareness of our internal emotional cues to eat. So by drawing attention to the present moment, we become aware of what it is that we're feeling and experiencing, and all of the other things that drive us to eat, such as emotions and boredom. Mindfulness trains individuals to notice these thoughts, emotions, and sensations. By increasing awareness of these cues, we are better equipped to deal with these feelings and respond in a more goal-directed behavior. And it appears that a mindful approach regulates amygdala functioning via functional connectivity through the medial prefrontal cortex. The third way that mindfulness seems to be beneficial is through an increased awareness and reduced responsiveness to external cues. So there are many things driving us to eat, and this could be things as simple as the sight and smell of food. So even if we're not hungry, just by seeing food, we suddenly experience an increased drive to eat, and mindfulness helps to mitigate that. So how can you practice mindful eating? Well, there are a couple of good resources. You've got the Mindful Eating Cycle by Michelle May, which asks a number of questions such as what do I want to eat, why do I want to eat, and the key one being, am I actually hungry? So if you find yourself being drawn to eat, that is probably the first question that you should ask yourself. Am I actually hungry? How am I really feeling right now? If hunger isn't the problem, then food isn't necessarily the solution, which is probably why we tend to overeat in these circumstances, because it isn't really what we need. If you are bored, what do you need a distraction from? Why do you need to be distracted? Are there other ways in which you can distract yourself without food, such as getting up and going on for a walk? You may decide after asking that question, am I actually hungry? And if the answer is no, that's fine. You may still decide that you do choose to eat, and that's also fine. Mindfulness is a bit of a reflective practice, so you can assess the situation, assess how you feel whilst you're eating, assess how you feel after the meal. Was that the right choice? And if you feel like this is something you're engaging in that's moving you further away from your goals, such as mindless eating or overeating, then perhaps reflect on that and just keep that in mind for next time. Another good resource is the Eating Mindfully website, which is run by someone called Susan Albers. She has a few checklists on there along with a mindful eating plate, and this just involves different things that you can ask yourself or check in with yourself whilst you are eating. So firstly, you want to determine your why. As mentioned, are you actually hungry? What is it that you really crave, and what is it that's best going to suit those needs? Then you can determine an appropriate response from there. If I'm sad, are there other ways in which I can deal with these emotions? Maybe I just need some social connection, so perhaps I can reach out to someone else. Or if you do decide to eat, as you are eating, you should practice eating without distractions. That means putting away phones or anything else that catches your attention. You want to take small bites, eat slowly, and pause between each bite. You want to savor the food as well, so really enjoy it. I think one thing that leads people to overeat is you're seeking some sort of feeling, and sometimes in order to get greater satisfaction from your meals, you don't necessarily need more food, you just need to practice savoring what you're currently eating. So slowing down will really help with that. Then also you want to take note of how you feel. Are you feeling uncomfortably full? Are you feeling pretty good? And a way to determine this, and a way that I often teach mindful eating, is in conjunction with the hunger scale. Now, you might think, I don't need a damn scale to tell me when to eat, but believe it or not, our internal cues and hunger and satiety feelings are something that a lot of us are out of touch with. So, referring to the hunger scale can be a useful guide for determining when to eat and when to stop eating. So, remember that mindfulness is something that we can all benefit from. We can all practice this, regardless of which approach we use to regulate our intake, whether that's macro tracking, non macro tracking, whatever it is. Mindfulness is something that we can all benefit from.